Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to Reddit Aliens. I'm John, and as always, thank you so much for being here. Good topic? Let's do it. What paranormal experience have you had that just can't be explained? Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. My dad and my grandfather had a huge fight and never spoke to each other after my grandpa divorced my grandma and married his woman on the side. He lived in New York and we live in Ohio, so it was not like anyone saw him that often, but when he would come to town, all of my dad's brothers and sisters would go visit him, and all the grandkids would too. So of course we would go, but Dad would drop us off in the driveway and pick us up there, never going to see his dad. Okay, so when I was in 8th grade, we got a phone call that something went wrong during Grandpa's open heart surgery, and he wouldn't make it through the next 24 hours. So my dad packed my brother and me in the truck and picked up Grandma. Then he drove through the night so we could see him one last time. We got to the hospital and all the family was there, but Grandpa had been in a coma. But the doctors said that he might pull through since he made it through the night. So we stayed for a day, and before we left, as we were saying goodbye to him, he woke up just as my brother and I were saying goodbye. He couldn't talk because he was intubated, but he told him we were there, and he seemed to look at us. There were tears in his eyes as we said goodbye and left. He died a few hours later. My dad, at no point in time, had gone in the room still to see Grandpa. So, we go back for the funeral, and I've never seen my dad cry ever. After almost losing his foot, other family funerals left not a single tear. Through the service, no tears. Once we got to the gravesite, he still showed no emotion. After the service was over and everyone was filing away, it was just my dad, my brother, and I, and Dad just broke down, bawling like a baby, leaning over the casket, just saying, "I'm so sorry, Dad. I never said goodbye. I'm a terrible son." We went there for about 15 minutes before Dad was able to go. So now for the supernatural part. We came home, and the next night, eating breakfast, my brother asked why I was outside of his room. I said I wasn't, and no one else was either. For the next few days, every night, there was a shadowy man standing in the doorway of my brother's room. When my parents were really getting worried and questioning whether or not my brother was making this up, suddenly pictures of my grandpa in the house were winding up on tables. Some of the pictures were moved from not even in the same room to tables in the kitchen or living room. My dad even slept with my brother a few nights, and all this was still going on with my brother sleeping through the night. Through all this, my dad was still beating himself up and crying every night. He never dreamed at all either. Just go to sleep and woke up the next morning. Then one night, Dad had a dream where he was fishing with Grandpa. Grandpa only did that once in his lifetime. And that was with us. And they talked. Grandpa understood why Dad was upset and forgave Dad. He said he was sorry to make my little brother for scaring him. He just wanted to see his buddy one last time and wanted to talk to Dad just one more time. Then he stood up, hugged Dad, and walked off into the woods. After that night, there were no more shadow men and no more crazy stuff happening in the house. About 2 years ago, as a janitor and a junior in college, I saw something that is quite inexplicable. It was a Friday night, and like most every other weekend, I was driving to my hometown. It was only about a 45-minute trip. It was around midnight when I began to see the general glow of lights from the city. And I approached my hometown on the interstate. As I was looking at the glow of my town, 3 vibrant green lights appeared in the night sky, way out in the distance, in front of me and well above the city. These 3 lights were equidistantly lined up on top of each other and were strangely vivid. All 3 lights zoomed from about the middle of my field of vision in the car and then to the left before disappearing. It was only for about 2 seconds, but the lights quite obviously covered quite a bit of distance in a very short amount of time. After seeing this short but quiet show and this amazing display, I burst out in a fit of obscenities. Holy Did that just happen? That was unreal. No way in hell am I going to sleep tonight. I've always been a skeptic toward UFOs or anything paranormal, and I've never looked for anything of the sort. But there was no denying that I had seen something wholly mystifying that night, and I will never forget it. This wasn't a result of some kids shooting a laser pointer in the sky, and the visual display was certainly not from any nearby buildings. I'm completely positive that it wasn't any sort of commercial aircraft due to the fact of the time and because I was living in rural Arkansas at the time. It's very hard to articulate exactly what I saw that night, and as a result, no one ever shares in my astonishment. It was certainly one of those things where you would have had to be there. Oh, and I guess and was definitely not under the influence or any drugs. Figured I should just put that out there. I'm kind of indifferent when it comes to ghosts, but there's this one thing that really made me wonder. About a year before I moved into my current house, the older lady across the street passed away, and my future best friend moved in. A year later, we met, and he would always tell me about how his house was haunted. We were just kids, so it was nothing but him trying to get a rise out of me. Fast forward 9 years, and I was spending the night on the couch after I had a long night of playing Gears of War. His mom worked very early in the morning and would always check her email on the computer, which was on the other side of the couch, not even a foot from my head. I woke up and heard typing. I didn't think anything of it at first, but then I realized it was about 6 a.m. and his mom would have left 45 minutes ago. I shook my friend awake and asked him if he heard it too. He jolted up and we both sprinted out of the room and had to sleep upstairs. To this day, it's been my only encounter with the paranormal, and I'm still not quite sure what to think of it. I used to be best friends with a girl who I drifted apart from. One night, I had a dream in which we were at a shopping center. She was telling me she had to go because she couldn't stay here, and I had better hurry up or I'd never see her again. She walked off while I was busy doing something, and then I couldn't find her. A few days later, I looked her up on Facebook. She had taken her whole life. Had I looked her up when I woke from the dream, I wouldn't have missed her funeral. Also, one day I came home with a 10-kilogram bag of dog food. I put it down several meters from my front door. I closed my door and went out again. When I came home, I had to force my door open because the dog food had somehow become wedged up behind it. My sister was at a bachelorette party about 10 years ago. As part of the evening festivities, the girls took the bride to a psychic. No real motive, just something to do for kicks. Most of the girls waited in the waiting room while the psychic did her reading with the bride, but my sister went in to observe. She said that the psychic was relaying information that she couldn't possibly have known or accurately guessed. Unlike vague housekeepers and horoscopes that can apply if the reader or listener wants them to, this lady was nailing specific facts. She mentioned that the ground had received a possible job, a specific fact. She mentioned the groom had revealed a possible job relocation to San Diego. I see you in California, San Diego perhaps. You're not happy. This is for a job? It's not a good idea to move. That job offer had been put on the table and discussed that very morning. No, the bridal party girls didn't plant that information because the bride hadn't revealed that conversation to anyone yet. Groom didn't plant the information either because the psychic visit wasn't planned. She also related messages from long-dead grandparents completely with inside family jokes. The whole thing was very unsettling. At one point, the psychic stopped the reading and apologized. "I'm sorry, but someone is here for you," pointing at my sister's eyebrows raised. Psychic describes a little old lady whose description matches our recently passed grandmother exactly. Again, not a vague outline that they could describe any grandma, but specifics. Hairstyle, unusually short posture, speech, and mannerisms. Psychic explained that this lady, presumably our grandmother, was insistent that my sister be asked if she got the dishes. Despite having a 99% accuracy that this is actually was Grandma speaking, the message made no sense. Grandma was exactly the type who would hijack a psychic reading for someone else in order to act her own way and questions to someone who wasn't even participating. Several days later, Sister told this story to Mom. Mom went absolutely white. She explained that in Grandma's last days, she was insistent that my sister inherit the good wedding china dishes. She reiterated that this at least 16 times per day. For some reason, it was extremely important that my sister have these dishes. Mom had never told anyone this, not me, not my sister, not the family, and simply hadn't gotten around to going through the portion of Grandma's stuff that contained the good wedding china. So what do you guys think of psychics? Just people in tune with people's reactions and quick thinking, social intelligence, or something more supernatural? Curious. About a year ago, I went to my friend's house because she kept feeling like someone was watching her and she kept hearing this knocking. Scared to begin with, I had a cross bracelet on just to make myself feel better. I walked into her house and started to feel really awkward. The air felt too still and way too quiet. We were talking, and all of a sudden, on the wall right behind me, I heard 3 very loud knocks. I immediately stopped talking and grabbed her arm because I was freaked out. 3 knocks again and again. I heard this indescribable voice just say, "Out." No one was in the house, and she is not one to play pranks. I told her I had to go, and I booked it. When I got to my car, I noticed a paint on my wrist. I took my wife and bracelets off, and it looks like I had been burned. Freaking out, I went and tried to get whatever could protect against this obvious evil. I got frankincense, myrrh, pyrite, sage, and lavender to hopefully feel safe. When I went back to her house, she said that he didn't want her to let me in, but that we could go somewhere else. In the next week, all of a sudden, I bought for her house was either smashed, torn, or just plain missing. Never went back to her house. Since then, she has been hospitalized twice, taking pain pills daily, and always has an execution order. When I was just a little kid, my older sister and younger sister died within a year of each other. As a result, my dad was pretty suicidal, so I tried not to bother him too much with my nightmares. Most nights, I ended up running to my parents anyway because I was 6, but tried so hard not to. One night my nightmares had been really bad. I woke up and just didn't see the point in going to wake my parents up to beg for comfort they couldn't give. Since I was still too upset to go back to sleep, I tried praying. I knelt and begged for help for probably an hour. Help from my parents, from my dead sisters, and from myself. I just wanted a simple night of rest. Eventually I stopped praying and just started crying. When arms wrapped around me and lifted me onto my feet, guided me into bed and eased me down under the covers. I opened my eyes and stood and looked around, expecting to see that I had been woken by my father with my crying, and he was putting me back to bed. Instead, I didn't see anyone. I looked around, but my room was empty. The warm person just hugged me and guided me down under the covers. I stopped caring that I couldn't see him. He didn't take away the pain or give me the peace I was begging for, but when those hands lifted me and tucked me in, I knew without a doubt that I was loved. I slept so deeply and so well that night. I woke up in the morning feeling stronger and more able to bear living.